At exactly 6:14 p.m., she pulled into the driveway, rolled down her window, and said, "Can you grab my charger from the nightstand?" No hug, no smile, just a casual favor, as if she had gone out to grab groceries and not spent 4 nights in New Orleans with a man whose name I still didn't know. I didn't ask questions, not that evening. I just walked upstairs, past the unmade bed, and stared at the charger for a few seconds. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because her hairbrush was gone, her lavender perfume, the canvas bag she kept her tampons in, all of it, gone. She had left the charger on purpose. When I returned and handed it to her through the open window, she didn't even say thanks. She just muttered, "We'll talk after I shower." And then she added the sentence that stuck in my skull like a nail behind the eye. "Let's fix this after my trip." Except the trip was already over, at least the one I knew about. See, 3 days earlier, I'd gotten a message on my old Facebook account from a name I didn't recognize, no photo. The message just said, "You deserve to know the truth. Room 317, Maison Doreen's Hotel, 8:45 p.m. Bring a jacket." I almost deleted it. I thought it was a scam, but something inside me, a hollow, unsettled ache, told me not to. That night, while she thought I was at my brother's fixing his broken dryer, I boarded a red-eye flight to Louisiana with shaking hands and a prepaid Visa card. What I saw through the half-closed blinds of room 317 is the kind of thing your brain tries to protect you from. The way she moved, the way she laughed, the way she looked at him like I had never existed. I didn't barge in, I didn't film it, I didn't scream or knock or threaten, I just watched. And when I returned home the next day, I laid a single envelope on the dining table. Inside was a folded napkin from the hotel bar with her lipstick print still on it. She never mentioned it. She packed up quietly 2 days later under the excuse of needing space. She said she'd be going back to New Orleans to figure herself out. That was the last real sentence she said to me. So now, here I sat, 6:14 p.m. again. Same driveway, same request for a charger, same window rolled down. Except this time, I wasn't handing her anything. Because while she thought she was buying herself time, I was selling the house. While she thought I was stuck in shock, I was emptying the joint account. And while she thought we'd fix this after the trip, I made absolutely sure there would be nothing left to fix. The first night without her was quiet in all the wrong ways. Not peaceful, empty. No hairdryer humming behind a half-closed door, no sound of her mismatched slippers scuffing across the hardwood, just the cold buzz of the fridge and the irritating tick of the kitchen clock she bought on sale last fall. I had never noticed how loud that thing was, or how long time could stretch when you're waiting for no one. She didn't text. She didn't call, not even to ask if I'd fed the dog, which she normally micromanaged as if he were our third child. The silence confirmed something I think I already knew the second she drove off. She hadn't left for space. She'd left for him. Tobias, maybe, or Zach, or the tattooed guy from room 317, whose name I still hadn't uncovered. But now I didn't care what his name was. I cared what hers was, who she had become, and most importantly, what she thought she was coming back to. Because she was coming back. She left her favorite boots, her yoga mat, her high-end curling iron, things a woman doesn't forget unless she intends to return. That wasn't an accident. That was insurance. She thought she could just drift back into this house as if it were her safety net, as if I'd just be waiting here, frozen in limbo with the lights on and dinner reheating. She was wrong. I spent the next few days surgically unraveling our shared life, thread by thread. I canceled the joint insurance plan, took my name off her car registration, shut down the grocery delivery account, and changed the password to the security system. I started with the little things, the conveniences. She wouldn't notice missing until they were already gone. Death by 1,000 clicks and cancellations. I even made a spreadsheet, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I wanted no mistakes, no loose ends. If she ever walked through that door again, I wanted her to feel what I had felt: invisible, unnecessary, out of place in a life that no longer had a shape molded to her. It wasn't until day 4 that she texted. The message was short. No greeting, no emojis. We should talk soon, maybe next weekend. I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. Not with sadness, but with something I couldn't quite name. Maybe power. Maybe resolve. Maybe it was the echo of the man I used to be, gasping his last breath before I buried him once and for all. Instead of replying, I screenshotted her message, printed it out, folded it once, and slid it inside the same envelope that had once held the napkin. I wrote her name in all caps. Then I drove to the post office and mailed it to her parents' address, the one she never updated on our tax documents. I didn't reply because I had nothing left to say. But she did. The next day, she called 3 times. I let it ring. On the 4th attempt, I picked up and said only 3 words: "You shouldn't come." She paused, clearly caught off guard. Then, with that voice she always used when trying to sound calm while controlling the narrative, she asked, "What do you mean? I thought we agreed." I cut her off. "No, you agreed with yourself. I just didn't argue." Her voice shifted. First confusion, then the low tremble of anger, barely restrained. "David, what are you doing? This is our marriage. We've been through worse." "No," I said. "You've done worse. I just finally opened my eyes." And then I ended the call. The silence that followed didn't feel hollow this time. It felt clean, like the first breeze through a cracked window after a long, stale winter. And for the first time in years, I realized something wild. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of finally admitting I should have done it a long time ago. The strange part wasn't that she came back. It was how casual she made it seem. No apology, no explanation, just a text on a Tuesday afternoon that read, "Be there Friday. We need to talk in person." As if this was a board meeting she could reschedule, not the wreckage of a life she had detonated. I didn't reply. I didn't clean the house. I didn't even move the envelope from the dining room table. The one with her lipstick-stained napkin, her printed message, and a receipt from the hotel bar where she'd left her earrings. I had folded them all together, like a homemade obituary for the marriage she buried in that room. Friday arrived like a threat. Rain fell sideways, the kind that taps hard on the windows as if demanding entry. She pulled into the driveway at 6:02 p.m., 25 minutes earlier than she'd said, because she always wanted the upper hand in timing. But this time, she didn't come to the door. She just sat in the car. I watched from the upstairs hallway, where I knew the curtain never cast a shadow. She stared at the house as if it didn't belong to her anymore. Because it didn't. Her name wasn't on the deed anymore. The utilities were all under mine. Even the mailbox bore just a single nameplate now. She wouldn't know any of that yet, but she would. After 5 minutes, she stepped out of the car, wearing the same long gray coat she'd worn to the airport, the one I used to love. It looked heavier now, or maybe she did. She rang the bell. Then again, 30 seconds later. I didn't answer. I wanted her to feel the weight of the silence she had planted between us. She called my phone twice. I let it buzz on the counter. Then she finally knocked. Not hard, just once. As if she didn't want to wake something. As if she didn't want the house to answer. And still, I stayed hidden. Because this wasn't her house anymore. The funny thing is, she had no key. She hadn't even noticed I'd swapped the locks 2 weeks ago. I'd called it a security upgrade in the email I sent to our joint account before I quietly closed it. Her access to the house was the same as her access to my trust, revoked. When she walked back to the car and drove off, no drama, no breakdown, I knew what was next. She wasn't the screaming type. She was strategic. She'd pivot, reframe, recast herself as the one abandoned. She'll call friends, twist timelines, say she tried to repair things, but I was too angry, too cold, too proud. I didn't care. Because that weekend, the final puzzle piece fell into place. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but I had a hunch, a deep, ugly hunch. "Is this David Easton?" a man asked, calm and polite. "Who's asking?" "This is Mark Holton. I guess you'd call me Lena's friend. I think we need to talk." I walked outside and stood in the rain without a coat. "Why?" I asked flatly. There was a pause, a soft breath, and then, "Because she's lying to both of us." Mark told me everything. He wasn't the guy from room 317. He was someone else entirely. Someone she had dated months ago, while still living here. They'd met at some retreat in Arizona. She told him she was separated, said I was emotionally distant, cold, controlling. She even told him I had cheated first. I laughed out loud in the rain. "She told you I cheated?" "Yeah," Mark said. "She cried when she said it. I believed her." "Well, I didn't cry when I found her in bed with someone else, but I have the receipts to prove it." Mark cursed under his breath. "I just thought you should know. She's been running the same story on different people. You're not the only one she's burning bridges with." That call confirmed it. She never wanted to fix anything. She just didn't want to be the one left behind. But this time, she was. By Monday morning, she started showing up. Not knocking, not texting, just showing up. The first time, she stood across the street, pretending to check her phone while peering through the living room blinds. The second time, she parked down the block and waited, watched, sat there like some feral memory, waiting to be invited in again. I didn't budge. She finally approached the front porch on Wednesday. I was in the kitchen brewing coffee when I heard the low creak of the wooden step she used to always complain about. "That board's going to snap one day," she'd say. It never did, but something else did, her pride. She rang the bell, but I still didn't answer. Then came the envelope, slid through the mail slot like an apology disguised as paperwork. Inside, a handwritten letter. Long, overly thoughtful, drenched in "I didn't know what I was doing," and "I was confused," and "you were just so distant." Classic. She was rewriting history with the elegance of someone who'd done it before. She didn't ask for forgiveness, she asked for understanding, which is worse because it pretends to be humble when it's really just a strategy. She ended the letter with, "We can still talk this through after the dust settles. I haven't stopped loving you." I poured coffee directly onto the page. Not out of rage, but out of finality. Because what she hadn't realized yet, and what made everything almost tragic in a poetic sort of way, was that she wasn't the story anymore. I was. See, the night before she first reappeared, I did something unexpected. I went to dinner. Not a date, not a rebound, just a meal with someone who had sat across from me at the mechanics 2 weeks earlier. Her name was Clara. She had oil on her hands, paint under her nails, and zero interest in small talk. She told me my car's rear suspension sounded bored. I liked that. She didn't ask about my past. She didn't ask why my wedding ring was gone. She just handed me a card for her metalwork studio and said, "Stop by if you ever need to hit something with a hammer." That night, I slept for 7 uninterrupted hours. Not because I was falling for someone new, but because I was no longer drowning in someone old. And that terrified Lena. Her calls became more frequent. Her messages shifted from calm to desperate. She left voicemails in the middle of the night with soft-voiced guilt grenades like, "You're really just going to erase me?" and "You said I was your home." But she was never my home. She was the hurricane I mistook for shelter. The final breaking point came one evening when she somehow got inside. I don't know if she had made a copy of the old key or if I forgot to lock the sliding door in the back. Either way, I found her standing in the living room like a ghost that didn't realize it was dead. She looked around as if everything had changed. Because it had. New furniture, bare walls. No trace of her life left here. Even the air had changed. No more lavender candles, no more eucalyptus mist she used to spray on the curtains. The house smelled like cedar now, like sharp beginnings. "David," she started, voice trembling, "what is this?" "This," I said, walking past her to pour a glass of water, "is my life. You don't live here." "But this is ours. You can't just erase everything." I turned and looked her in the eye, really looked, and I saw the fear, not of a woman losing love, but of losing leverage. "You didn't want this life," I said calmly. "You just didn't want me to be the one to end it." She stood in silence, blinking hard. And then, as if it finally clicked, she whispered, "You're serious?" I didn't nod. I didn't flinch. I just said, "You told me to wait until after your trip. So I waited. And I made sure when you came back, there'd be nothing left to fix." She left without another word. This time, she didn't slam the door. She closed it quietly, as if she finally understood it wasn't hers anymore. It took her 3 days to retaliate. That's how long it took to shift from begging voicemails to the thing I knew was coming: character assassination. I woke up that morning to 3 missed calls from a blocked number, one anonymous email titled, "You need to check this out," and a flurry of messages from mutual acquaintances, all with that same awkward energy. "Hey, just wanted to check in. Is everything okay?" At first, I thought maybe she had tried to fake a crisis, something she could use to lure me into a conversation. But it was worse. She'd gone nuclear, the slow burn version. I found out through screenshots that she was telling people I'd become unstable, emotionally abusive, and possibly unwell. The last one stuck with me. Unwell. That's how you soften a lie. Not dangerous, not toxic, just off. Just sick enough that people don't want to get involved, that they start saying things like, "I'm staying out of it, but I hope he gets help." It was strategic and familiar. I didn't panic. I documented everything. Every voicemail, every text, every contact who had heard something. I put it all in a folder that lived on a cloud drive, password protected and ready, just in case this ever escalated beyond whispers. I wasn't playing her game. I was just making sure I could burn the entire rulebook if I had to. But what she didn't count on, and what made this all unravel even faster, was that people had started asking me questions too. Not everyone bought her story. 2 of her old friends, women I never really connected with but always respected, reached out to me directly. One of them, Tessa, even wrote, "I'm sorry. I know Lena's hurting, but this doesn't sound like you. I think something's off." And that's when I realized something critical. Lena didn't just lose a marriage. She lost the narrative. In every other chapter of her life, she got to rewrite the endings. Her ex-boyfriend from college, emotionally unavailable. Her old boss, manipulative. Her father, distant and cold. I never thought much of it until now, but the pattern was always there. She told stories that made her the victim and everyone else the villain or the fool. And I just refused to play either role. Still, I knew she wasn't done. I was walking out of the local hardware store, of all places, when I saw her car in the lot. My stomach didn't drop, my heartbeat didn't spike. I just stopped, breathed in, and walked toward my truck as if she wasn't even there. But she wasn't there by coincidence. She stepped out of her car and followed me halfway across the lot. "David," she called, not loud, just enough. I turned. "What do you want?" Her face had that polished look again. Hair done, lips tinted, coat too new for a small-town parking lot. It was the same presentation she used when interviewing for jobs she was overqualified for. Calculated effort, not sincerity. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "Can we talk? Somewhere neutral?" "You've been talking plenty," I replied, "just not to me." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time, I saw something resembling panic. Not because I'd caught her in a lie, but because I wasn't reacting to it. I wasn't defending myself. I wasn't begging her to stop. I was just letting her dig her own hole. "I made mistakes," she said quickly, as if she'd rehearsed it. I was scared. I acted out, but I never wanted things to get this messy. You know me, David. You know me. I shook my head. I knew someone. I'm not sure who's standing in front of me now. She stepped closer. Then let me show you. Give me that chance. I almost laughed. You had a chance. You asked me to wait until after your trip. I waited, and when I saw what that trip really was, I stopped waiting. She looked like she was going to cry, but I'd seen her cry before, real tears, quiet ones. This was a performance, a high-stakes monologue for an audience of one. You really won't even have a conversation with me? She said softly. I already did, I said. You just weren't in the room. I turned and got into the truck. She didn't follow. And when I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw her standing alone, fist clenched, jaw set. Not crying, not begging, just losing. And this time, she knew it. 3 days after the parking lot standoff, I got a certified letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew who it was from before I even signed for it. The envelope was too perfect, too clean, the kind you only send when you have a lawyer behind it, or at least want someone to think you do. I opened it carefully, as if it might bleed. Inside was a tight statement from Lena, 3 full pages long. At the top, in bold, confidential, intent to pursue separation mediation. Not divorce, not a lawsuit, not even a cease and desist. Just a vague, slippery suggestion that I might want to consider amicable steps to resolve lingering tension and asset division. And at the bottom, a handwritten note scrawled in blue ink. We don't need to destroy each other. I'm still willing to be kind. Kind? That word nearly made me laugh out loud. This from the woman who'd painted me as unstable to anyone who would listen, who'd vanished to another state with a man she called just a work friend, who had the gall to return weeks later and ask if I'd held her place in line. She thought I'd break when she left. She thought I'd snap when she lied. She thought I'd beg when she came back. Instead, I evolved. Quietly, sharply, without noise or cruelty, just precision. Her face had that polished look again. Hair done, lips tinted, coat too new for a small-town parking lot. It was the same presentation she used when interviewing for jobs she was overqualified for. Calculated effort, not sincerity. I didn't come here to fight, she said. Can we talk? Somewhere neutral? You've been talking plenty, I replied, just not to me. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time, I saw something resembling panic. Not because I'd caught her in a lie, but because I wasn't reacting to it. I wasn't defending myself. I wasn't begging her to stop. I was just letting her dig her own hole. I made mistakes, she said quickly, as if she'd rehearsed it. I was scared. I acted out, but I never wanted things to get this messy. You know me, David. You know me. I shook my head. I knew someone. I'm not sure who's standing in front of me now. She stepped closer. Then let me show you. Give me that chance. I almost laughed. You had a chance. You asked me to wait until after your trip. I waited, and when I saw what that trip really was, I stopped waiting. She looked like she was going to cry, but I'd seen her cry before, real tears, quiet ones. This was a performance, a high-stakes monologue for an audience of one. You really won't even have a conversation with me? She said softly. I already did, I said. You just weren't in the room. I turned and got into the truck. She didn't follow. And when I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw her standing alone, fist clenched, jaw set. Not crying, not begging, just losing. And this time, she knew it. 3 days after the parking lot standoff, I got a certified letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew who it was from before I even signed for it. The envelope was too perfect, too clean, the kind you only send when you have a lawyer behind it, or at least want someone to think you do. I opened it carefully, as if it might bleed. Inside was a tight statement from Lena, 3 full pages long. At the top, in bold, confidential, intent to pursue separation mediation. Not divorce, not a lawsuit, not even a cease and desist. Just a vague, slippery suggestion that I might want to consider amicable steps to resolve lingering tension and asset division. And at the bottom, a handwritten note scrawled in blue ink. We don't need to destroy each other. I'm still willing to be kind. Kind? That word nearly made me laugh out loud. This from the woman who'd painted me as unstable to anyone who would listen, who'd vanished to another state with a man she called just a work friend, who had the gall to return weeks later and ask if I'd held her place in line. She thought I'd break when she left. She thought I'd snap when she lied. She thought I'd beg when she came back. Instead, I evolved. Quietly, sharply, without noise or cruelty, just precision. I didn't respond to her letter. I didn't even acknowledge its receipt. But that same night, I printed a different kind of letter, one she wouldn't see coming. It was from my attorney, a petition for full separation of property, certified and time-stamped, noting every account I had closed, every asset I had reallocated, and, most importantly, every piece of documentation I'd gathered proving premeditated abandonment of the marriage. See, the thing about Lena was that she was clever, but careless. She never thought her hotel booking confirmations would resurface. She never figured the audio file she left playing in her car of her giggling and telling someone she was glad David's too dull to ask questions would be recorded by the same system she insisted we install for safety. And she definitely didn't expect me to play her game better than she could. When the letter arrived at her P.O. box, it triggered the next phase of panic. She didn't call, she didn't text, she showed up again, this time during my Sunday morning coffee run. I was sitting on the patio of the local cafe, flipping through a dog-eared paperback when she appeared across the street. No makeup, no coat, just sunglasses and the look of someone who'd run out of moves. She walked straight up to my table and, without a word, sat down across from me. "Are you really going to go through with it?" she asked. No preamble. I kept my eyes on the book. "You mean protecting myself? Yeah, I really am." "David," she started, but her voice broke a little. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I got caught in something I didn't know how to get out of." I looked up. "You didn't get caught in anything. You chose it, and you stayed long enough to build a story about how I deserved it." She flinched. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. And in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. She wasn't here because she loved me. She was here because she realized no one else did. The man from New Orleans? Gone. The new friends? Fading. The one she'd lied to on her way out had gone quiet. The people she expected to back her up didn't pick sides because they didn't want to be used next. She wasn't grieving a marriage, she was grieving a spotlight. And I wasn't going to give her one. So I leaned in calmly and said, "You don't need to love me, Lena, but you do need to leave me alone, and this time you don't get to rewrite the ending." She sat there for a long time. I think part of her still expected me to crack, but eventually she stood up, nodded once, and walked away. She didn't say goodbye. And for once, I didn't need her to. Because the next move, that was mine. It didn't end with that cafe scene. I wanted it to. That moment had all the weight of closure, the silence, the sting, the subtle finality. But people like Lena don't exit stage left. They linger in the wings, rewriting lines for a second act that no one asked for. The letter she sent next was handwritten again. No lawyers this time. No polite formatting or hollow legal language, just 8 pages of raw, panicked rambling. It arrived folded 3 times over, stained faintly on one edge, as if she'd cried while writing it, or maybe wanted me to believe she had. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was a performance. She told stories of how lonely she'd been, of how I never really saw her, of how her affair wasn't about him, it was about feeling wanted. She blamed her choices on the oxygen she claimed was missing in our marriage. She even wrote, "If you had just held my hand in that grocery store when I reached for yours, maybe none of this would have happened." 8 pages and not a single sentence of true accountability. But one thing did stand out. Near the bottom of the last page, she wrote, "I'm not proud of what I've done, but you've made it clear you don't want me back, so maybe it's time I tell the truth to everyone, even if it hurts you too." And just like that, she crossed the final line. She wasn't coming to reclaim love. She was threatening to burn the village if she couldn't sit on the throne. I stared at the letter for a long time, heart slow and steady. This wasn't fear I felt anymore. It was recognition. She had nothing left but the illusion of control, and even that was slipping through her fingers. What she didn't know was that I had spent the last week preparing. The moment I saw her behavior shift from desperation to veiled threats, I began pulling together everything: my own story, my proof, my timeline. Not to fight her, but to end her power over me permanently. I reached out to a quiet journalist I knew through a friend, not a tabloid chaser, but someone who understood emotional manipulation and coercion inside relationships. I offered to tell my side, not with bitterness or drama, but as a cautionary story. A quiet, composed, rational man who had been used, manipulated, and nearly erased. The story wouldn't name her. It didn't have to. What mattered was the message. When I sent over my files, documents, screenshots, recordings, there was a long pause on the other end of the call. Then the journalist said something I'll never forget. "She built the fire. All you did was light a match." I didn't publish the article right away. I gave Lena one last chance. I wrote a single message, short and surgical. "I received your letter. Don't ever contact me again. If you do, I won't respond. I'll simply release everything. No names, just truth." She didn't reply. 2 days passed, then 5, then 10. No calls, no letters, no voicemails under new numbers. Just silence. And in that silence, something strange happened. I started laughing again. Not the forced kind, not the "I'm doing okay" performance laugh. Real, deep, stupid laughter. At sitcoms, at burned toast, at an email from a coworker who misspelled urgent as urine. My body remembered what it felt like to not be under quiet siege. I was lighter, not healed, healing. I went to Clara's studio again. This time I didn't just drop by. I stayed. We smashed old scrap metal with sledgehammers and called it therapy. We drank bitter coffee and talked about how small life feels when you forget to notice it. She didn't ask about Lena. She never had, and I loved her for that. Later that night, I stood in my backyard, barefoot in the grass, holding Lena's final letter in one hand and a lighter in the other. I didn't burn it with rage. I burned it like someone clearing out old furniture. Nothing personal, just unnecessary now. As the flame chewed its way through her carefully curved handwriting, I realized she was never going to understand what she lost. But that wasn't my burden anymore. A month passed, then 2. Each day folded into the next without chaos, without confusion, without her. There were no texts at midnight, no surprise knocks at the door, no sudden whispers from mutual friends trying to mediate. For the first time in what felt like years, I was living a life that didn't orbit around someone else's storm. And slowly, almost without noticing, I began to rebuild. Not in some dramatic tear-down-the-walls way, nothing cinematic, just real. I replaced the broken Finch feeder she used to complain about but never lifted a hand to fix. I finally donated the box of winter clothes we both said we'd go through someday. I started cooking again, not for 2, just for me. And that was enough. One morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and realized something startling. I looked different. Not younger, not tougher, just more present, as if I wasn't shrinking anymore to fit someone else's version of me. I didn't talk about Lena much. I didn't need to, not because I was suppressing anything, but because I'd already said everything that needed to be said, to her, to myself. And when people brought her up, I smiled without flinching. That was how I knew I was free. One afternoon, I got a message from someone unexpected. Lena's sister, Ruth. We hadn't spoken since the breakup. I almost didn't open it, but I'm glad I did. All it said was, "I don't know what she told people, but I know what she did. Just wanted you to hear that from someone in the family. Hope you're doing okay." I didn't respond. There was nothing to fix, nothing to fight, and nothing to prove. A week later, I ran into Clara again. She'd been welding something massive in her studio, hair tied back with a bandana, face streaked with sweat and soot. We shared coffee without expectation. There was no flirtation, no rushing anything. She handed me a chipped mug, sat across from me, and said, "You ever think about what kind of man you'd be if none of this happened?" I thought for a long time. Then I said, "Yeah, I'd be quieter, smaller. I think I'd still be trying to keep someone else happy." She smiled. "So this version of you keeping him?" And for the first time in a long time, I said something that felt unshakably true. "Yeah," I said, "I think I am." That night, I didn't dream about her. Not about the trip, not the hotel, not the letters, not even the charger she left behind. Instead, I dreamed about a version of my life that was finally mine again. And when I woke up, I didn't feel hollow. I felt whole.